People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson.
Today what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time talking about employee engagement and does it even matter? And one of the things, or three of the areas that we're going to cover is, first of all, what is employee engagement? Then once you've figured out what it is, how do you measure it? How do you know that it's going on in your organization? And then lastly, and we don't mean this to be negative to any people in this generation, but does it only matter to millennials?
So what is employee engagement? What do you think, Lou?
Employee engagement, I always look at using an old model called the B.F. Tuckman model, where there are 4 stages of a group or a team that works together. The very first stage, obviously, is the forming stage, where the group gets together and they get to know each other. There's nice talk, there's no disagreements, but there's no really agreements on things. And then they're together for a short period of time. The second phase I go into is what's called the storming phase. And the storming phase is an area where everyone just starts to mark their territory. This is what I do, this is what you do, and you need to get through the storming area, get into the third phase, which is the norming area. And I think in a lot of organizations I work with, everyone stops in the norming area. And the norming area is basically, I've got a job to do, you're on my team, we've set some deadlines, there is good teamwork, but there's not really the trust that needs to be taking place in the team. And if you want to get to an area of true employee engagement, it's the fourth phase. And the fourth phase is what B.F. Tuckman referred to as the performing stage. And with the performing stage, you get your team members, your employees who are trusting each other. They're very engaged. They're looking for opportunities for improvement. They're looking for ways to increase efficiencies. And they're all looking out for one another. But a lot of groups, a lot of teams, a lot of companies that I've worked with don't get to that performing stage.
Right.
They're meeting their numbers, but it's sometimes it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah, well, and I think that's interesting. I think that definitely is all driven to some employee engagement ideas. The way I view employee engagement in a lot of ways is, how much are my employees identifying with the mission and vision of the business? And how aligned are they with what we're doing, and do they feel invested as part of that organization? And that breaks down into a lot of categories around, do I feel like I'm fully utilized in my job? Am I working in my full capacity? Are my roles clear? How much autonomy do I have in my role? Do I feel safe? Is an environment where I feel like I could be fired at any moment? So there's a lot of different areas I think you can measure. How many, do I have friendships in the business? And the reality is we're spending, a lot of our life at work. And I think there's some ideas of feeling aligned with the business and actually having relationships with people in the business. These are all the things that I think lead to employee engagement and actually help you get to kind of that performing stage that you talked about. Yeah.
Okay. The next area we're going to cover is, now that you've gone ahead and you know what employee engagement is, how do you measure it? Because in many instances in our companies, we measure things through revenue, we measure things through expenses, we measure things through sales. We look at all of the typical management metrics, but this employee engagement thing is something new. And aside from just how employees feel, and how else do you measure that engagement?
I think it's this kind of idea of employee engagement has evolved. We've seen out in the market, and I used a company that did this back in my last company, Student Connections, where we could actually measure employee engagement. And they provided a series of regular surveys that we shared with their staff that measured things like I was talking about earlier, the level of autonomy you feel, your psychological safety, your friendships, and it helps you measure. And then you can actually take that for all your employees and break that down at the team level and really find out where your weaknesses is. You may find out that in one area people aren't really developing friendships, and in another area people don't feel like they have a lot of autonomy. And actually you can then go further and drill down into those with additional follow-up questions. So you can go in and try and remedy that and then measure it like all metrics. How is it performing over time? Am I getting better? Am I getting worse?
Right, okay. So this is just surveys.
Yeah. It can be surveys, and then I think that manifests itself in a lot of ways in business performance. If you have a high level of employee engagement, you're going to probably have a low level of turnover.
Right.
Turnover is expensive for a business.
Sure.
it costs a lot to replace a person.
What do they say, $100,000 for every time someone
Oh, yeah.
leaves and you're losing is walking out the door?
Absolutely, and as soon as you do that, if you can reduce that by a percentage over the course of the year by building the employee engagement, that actually helps you save money as a business. And people who are engaged with the business, I used to tell my employees, I'm not looking for you to jump out of bed and run into the office cheering every day.
It would be nice if they did.
It would be great. That's how I always came into the office. But what I really want is I don't want people getting out of bed and in drudgery, dragging themselves to work because it's a miserable place to be.
Hitting the snooze button 13, 14
That's right.
times.
Yeah, and just let's so when you have employees who are engaged, they're going to perform at a better level, which is only going to be better for the business. So I think all these things kind of together help you not only measure what's going on with engagement, then also you can measure what the impact is on results.
And I guess the validity of both of the survey, well, let me say this, you can validate the survey based upon your results.
Yeah.
Are you meeting your numbers? Are you ahead of schedule? Are you meeting your budget? Are you under budget? And if you've got those things taking place, then what the employees told you
Right.
is actually true.
I think,
When it comes to feelings, I always want to back it up with something solid to make sure that it's not, well, the employees know that they're going to be filling this out, that I'm going to be reading it, so they're going to say what they believe that I want them to say.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think for all employees, anything like this, some level of confidentiality is crucial to get honest feedback.
Okay.
So,
All right.
but so you mentioned this earlier. This isn't really kind of casting aspersions at millennials, which apparently can be a fun game for a lot of people. But really, is employee engagement just something that we're doing because we're trying to get the millennials into the workplace now?
Yeah, and again, it's almost we're being politically correct here by couching everything with millennials because we don't want to offend millennials. And the other thing too is when it comes to millennials and when it comes to our generation, baby boomers or Gen Xers and everything, it's just a characteristic. It's not necessarily everybody is like that. But we do find with the new generation of leaders, how's that for a term? Millennials.
Perfect.
New generation of leaders that are coming into our workplace. They're looking at things differently than those of us that were in the Gen X or the baby boomer, and even some veteran generation members who are still around. They look at things differently. We can go into a whole bunch of different characteristics, but some of the things that we look at when we look at the millennial generation, those years, they want friendships in their organization. They want to feel that they are definitely being part of a group and they're being used, as you said, to their fullest. They don't want to come just to work and sit at a computer all day and not do anything. Social is a big issue, so is there areas or opportunities for them to socialize with their people? As you said, we spend most of our life at work, so why not make it a place where we want to be? And so when you look at employee engagement, yeah, it is not just the millennials, but I think they have highlighted it for us as older members of society. Is a nice way to say it. But I'm not 60 yet, but I can reach it from here. And so I think they've exposed some things to us, and employee engagement is definitely one of those.
Yeah, I agree. I think they may have raised the level of awareness of these issues for leaders, but these issues impact every generation, including my generation X. I'm not that close to 60. But yeah, I think it's actually a real thing that I think Dave maybe highlighted, but it is only something but you're not going to just have happier millennials if you improve employee engagement. It's going to impact your entire workforce.
Sure.
So I think it's net, it's actually something that's going to help your whole business. So.
Yeah, and what they say is statistically, they say that millennials don't give you that much of a chance. I mean, they're ready to move a lot quicker than maybe folks in your generation or my generation. It's, I'm not happy here, I'm moving on, as opposed to our generations was, that's my job, this is where my benefits come from, this is where I'm paying my mortgage from. They don't look at their job as their life.
Right.
And they look at their life and their job is something that provides them opportunities, but if I not like it here, I'm going to move on.
Absolutely.
And I think statistics, yield that out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly as we are today in a very low unemployment environment, there's a lot of opportunities for people to make moves. And I think we see that. And I've talked to a lot of leaders recently who said they've seen that happening. You know, people are moving very quickly if they're not getting what they want. So it does make sense to pay attention to these things. So, you know, aside from that takeaway, Lou, what are some of your key takeaways today?
Some of my key takeaways is obviously employee engagement in many instances is something new that we're all experiencing. I think it's all come to fruition in the last maybe 6 to 7 years, where employee engagement is something that I hear with companies that I work with. They talk a lot about it. They talk about culture changes. One of the things that I hear a lot about is employees taking ownership and creating an ownership culture so that they do want to be more productive. They want to be part of the team. This is fulfilling their life.
Yep.
And I think in many instances in the past, we've ignored that. It's, you've got a job to do, 8 to 5, this is where you need to come in, this is what you need to do. And so if you are not taking employee engagement into consideration, or you're not spending a lot of time on it, I think truly it is, in order to be a successful organization, you need to focus on that.
Yeah, and I think my key takeaway is this has grown, and the awareness of this has grown. There are ways to measure it, and every good business leader wants to measure something to understand whether they're progressing or whether they're regressing. And there are now tools out there to help you measure it,
Right.
and then you can act on it, and then you can actually see the impact on results. So I think that's going to help a lot of leaders kind of wrap their brains around this idea of employee engagement, because now it's just theoretical. It's actually something I can measure. Right? It's something I can measure. It's something I can do something about and invest in. So I think we'll see. I think that's really going to change the game for the next several years. Awesome.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us again on Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. We hope you liked this particular video. If you did, please click the like button below, subscribe to Q&A so that you'll be notified when we have future podcasts and be able to watch and get some insight from both Craig and I. Again, I'm Lou Quinto.
I'm Craig Anderson. Thanks for
Thanks.
joining us.